We started off quickly in a closed session at 6:30, and then been having a bit of fun out the front. So now we're moving into the regular meeting. Is there any additional items that staff wants to add, or other councillors? Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Worship. I'll be following up for the Walk for Water 2017.
Okay, anyone else on that side? Seeing none this way. Deputy Mayor Wright.
Thank you, Worship. I have two items. One is the mention of the Order of Good Cheer and their boat cruise. The other is the OSIM conference.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll have up to 9 maybe items that I'll report on fairly quickly. It's been a busy couple of weeks. And next we're confirming minutes of the regular meeting from April 24th.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Gregg, that the minutes of the regular meeting held on April 24, 2017 as printed be adopted.
All in favor? That's carried. I kind of jumped the schedule there before I got there. I was supposed to ask if there's any pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. I'm seeing none. Thank you. So number 6 is resolution.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Gregg, that City Council now go into Committee of the Whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business.
All in favor? That is carried. So now we are now in the Committee of the Whole. We have no public meetings. However, this is one of the most fun nights of the year. We're presenting Volunteers of the Year. So I'm going to go up to the other podium there. I'm going to ask Councillor Dodd to come with me, who is the chair of the Community Services Committee, to assist me. There we go. So this is a fun night for all of us. We welcome guests, family, and friends for our 2017 Volunteer of the Year presentation. As mayor, I'm afforded the opportunity to attend countless functions on a yearly basis. And one of the constants that I keep running into is all the hard work and all the volunteer work and donation of time, money that our community does to make our community better. In the last week, we've had Volunteer of the Week, or Volunteer Week, and I've been to 90th anniversary of the Ladies Auxiliary at the Legion, Rogers Cable, a whole bunch of different events recognizing some of the volunteers that we have. Our community would not be successful without the hundreds of volunteers, whether it be churches, whether it be sports programs, all the activities, the hospital. You think of all the people that volunteer up there, and various other things in our own community groups. So it's pretty special to be able to recognize a couple of really special volunteers that have been in the forefront and helped our community for several years. It's the work of the two people that we're representing tonight is truly remarkable, and we are very fortunate to be able to have both of them here to be recognized. I'm going to start with Kathy Lindsay. As mentioned, we'll be honoring 2 recipients this evening. Our first is recognized as Owen Sound resident Kathy Lindsay. She was nominated by the Alzheimer's Society of Grey Bruce, whom she has volunteered with for the past 7 years. She also volunteers, her volunteer contributions extend well beyond the Alzheimer's Society, includes OSHARE for 4 years, the Canadian Legion Branch 6, as well as the Branch 6 Ladies Auxiliary for the past 8 years, Summerfolk for 8 years, Catholic Women's League for 30 years, Blood Donor Clinic for 7 years, and from what Brent Fisher tells me, she's a key member of Springfest 55 Plus Games on the organizing committee. Judging by the nomination form submitted by the Alzheimer's Society, Kathy could well be the first Alzheimer's Society volunteer with her own fan club. Her work, whether it be in the front desk, organizing workshops and courses, or her unfailing attitude in the workplace, certainly do not go unnoticed by her peers at the Society. Kathy's contributions to these organizations extend well beyond just showing up to lend a hand. She is a leader who looks to better the lives of the people around her through involvement and selfless attitude. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Council and the citizens of Owen Sound, please join Councilor Travis Dodd and I, and all of Council, congratulating Kathy Lindsay. She wants to come forward. She's pretty close right now. For her for recognition as Volunteer of the Year Award, along with a token of appreciation from our MP Larry Miller and our MPP Bill Walker. So welcome. Thank you.
Oh, you guys just made me sound better than I thought I was. I came home and retired back home and have enjoyed everything. I'm very involved with Alzheimer's, as they know, and do a lot with the Ladies Auxiliary. And without the two of them, I have made such wonderful friends, and I enjoy my volunteering and giving back to the community. But as my sister will tell you, we learned this as kids from our mom, who was Ursula White. And from her, Mom did a lot of volunteering, and as children, that's what we saw. So we learned to give back to the community. So I thank you, and I thank everyone that is here to support me. And thank you.
Congratulations again, Kathy. Our second recipient tonight, it would be fair to say that any of us involved in sports as youngsters always remember that coach as having a special impact. And Owen Sound resident Rod Wyatt has certainly been that person to many area youth. A sports enthusiast his whole life, Rod has immersed himself in minor sports since 1986. Involved with Owen Sound minor hockey from 1986 to 2012, so that's 26 years by my count, as a manager and house league convener. Also, Owen Sound minor soccer from 1986 to present, so if I'm counting in my fingers correctly, that's 31 years. Membership chair, referee, convener, vice president, president, coach, and creator of the Under 4 program. Rod has also donated his time and expertise to the Heart and Stroke Foundation, and most recently become a volunteer at the nonprofit housing. It takes a special individual to remain involved with and committed to youth sports, particularly when their children have graduated, grown up, and moved on. Rod is at his happiest when he's at the soccer complex, and his love for sports and teaching today's youth shines through in spades. He has made our minor sports programs in our city a better place. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Council and the citizens of Owen Sound, please join Councillor Travis Dodd and myself in congratulating Mr. Rod Wyatt.
I'd just like to thank Council and the City of Owen Sound for this very prestigious award. It's been my pleasure to be involved in minor sports, both hockey and soccer over the years. I've met many great individuals who are either on the executive, the coach, or who are parents of the kids who play. And that's been the reason I keep coming back every year, I guess, other than seeing the thrill on the faces of the children when they're playing, and their enjoyment of sports and keeping them active in the community. You don't do this on your own, so I feel kind of strange standing here and receiving this award when I know that I've just been a member of a great bunch of individuals and groups of people. Many are here today that worked with over the number of years I've been involved with minor sports. And without them, I wouldn't be as successful as I have been. So I'd like to thank them, both minor hockey and minor soccer people I've worked with. I've also recently got on to the Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing Board, and that has allowed me to continue my involvement in social housing, which I spent 40-some years working at, and again, another group of very dedicated individuals who are trying to make our community a better place. So on behalf of all the people I've worked with, I thank you for this important pleasure.
So for other volunteers that are at home, it's wonderful to be able to recognize Rod and Kathy as what they've done, and all the volunteers, hundreds of volunteers in our community that help make it a better place, and we thank everyone. So thank you.
Thank you.
That was the fun stuff. Now we get to deal with business. Oh, wait a minute. We have one more fun thing, I think, before we go. Next, we have a deputation from Norm Bell, president of the Owen Sound Rowing Club, and Krista McKee from Grace Sabo Conservation Authority with regard to a planned event for the 150th. I'll get you to Norm to push. There's a button there, and then the red light will come on. There we go. Thank you.
Your Worship, Council, potential Riverfest attendees, both here and on TV tonight. I, along with my committee colleague, Krista McKee, I'm pleased to be here before you to inform you about the awesome Sydenham Riverfest Extravaganza adventure. The awesome Sydenham Riverfest Extravaganza Adventure is an ambitious citywide event that celebrates the Sydenham River. I echo Mayor Body's very gracious comments, and without volunteers like yourselves, Riverfest would just not be possible. So it's kind of apropos we're in some very good company tonight to have all these great volunteers here tonight. So Riverfest is also organized by volunteers and mostly funded by private donors and in-kind contributions. So by the time Riverfest runs its course, the event will have been in the planning stage for more than a year. A couple of photos here. Every paddle on the Sydenham River is an adventure. So what we're planning is one that the whole city can share. The event will kick off at the Inner Harbor with our festive river parade, which will continue to Harrison Park. There'll be bagpipes, air horns, and the Foundry steam whistle, tugboat horns, and even a vintage aircraft fly past, which will signal the boisterous start of the parade. The 2017 River Parade is loosely based on the flotilla that ran in 2012, which maybe some of you will remember, as part of the Harrison Park 100th anniversary celebrations. So some of the photos we're showing here capture some of the enthusiasm that that event generated. This year, River Parade is a little more elaborate than the one that was 5 years ago. It's going to draw on more participants and spectators. We're promoting it to a wider audience, and we're inviting riverfront property owners to get involved with decorations and music along the way. Buses will ferry the well-wishers along the route so that the riverbanks and bridges will teem with excitement and color as the parade passes by. Prizes will be given to encourage decorated boats, riverfronts, and costumes. It'll be a citywide event that will be remembered for a long time. The grand arrival of the parade at Harrison Park will be met with the city band and crowds of well-wishers. Volunteers will help boaters onto the riverbanks, and watercraft of every description will blanket most of the island south of the Rainbow Bridge. So, part two is the extravaganza. The opening ceremonies will be introduced by our town crier, and they will usher in the next part of the program. And from then on, the rest of the day will be filled with 1860s themed displays, educational nature activities, games, races, and more. Old-time 1860s music will set the tone for an afternoon of family fun, while Indigenous peoples' displays and teachings will present a wider picture of the life on the Sydenham before the settlement of the town. Ask Krista if she could carry on with the next portion of you.
So of course I'm very passionate about the next portion of the event. And we can all remember as young children playing down at Harrison Park in the river. So the Grace Auble Conservation is celebrating their 60th anniversary in part with the Sydenham River Fest at Harrison Park. With the Critter Dip, I challenge you to come and roll up your pant legs, because you can experience these hand-on activities in finding and identifying aquatic wildlife in our river. Riverfest presents a valuable opportunity to educate the public on the importance of the Sydenham River ecosystem and the biodiversity it supports. It's a vitally important for people, especially the young, which are our future land stewards, to see for themselves how much life exists just out of sight. This kind of knowledge promotes the link to our ecosystems, which ultimately leads to how we are connected. And yes, don't get squeamish on me. The Nature Scales Park will be on site with its famous collection of snakes and amphibians, which, of many can be found in Harrison Park, believe it or not. And along the Sydenham River, participants will have a unique opportunity to get up close and personal with these fascinating creatures and learn from the experts about their habitats and behavior. Of course, live 19th century folk music. You can't have a festivity without it.
Thank you. We also will have miniature paper boat races. The boat hulls will be available around town. Participants are going to be encouraged to decorate and modify their own boats. The hull design and the display copy has been custom designed for this event. Nothing similar has been run elsewhere. The Boy Scouts of Canada will assist us and oversee this activity. Owen Sounds Bellwick Packaging has contributed all the production costs for the printing of this. You can see it on the screen, but this is the size we're talking about, 8.5 by 11. Both sides, light cardboard, scored and folded so that you can have it at local vendors, and children can pick it up there and bring it to the event. The template that I'm showing you has the dates on it as well, so it serves two purposes: to inform people of the date of the event and the times. Our Indigenous people's contribution will be an immersive experience with drumming and teaching geared to traditional river life. Teams of two will compete against each other using a two-handled crosscut saw. Fastest time to cut a disc from the cradled log will win. It's a small photo of the wood burning that we've got envisaged to burn each of the discs and brand it with the events and the event.
Norm, I hope the competitors are faster than the two guys in the picture. They were
We found
really
that-
slow.
We found that photo on the internet, and do you know who's in that?
Well, Phil Walker was the slow one of the pair.
Life on the Sydenham River in the 1860s is the theme of the extravaganza portion of our Riverfest. Members of the public will have the opportunity to carry out tasks typical of that time period. Some of you are wondering where this is. There's a map here that we have. Krista's going to pass out some actual paper copies, and maybe I'd ask you to hold questions. We've got it. We can bring it back later if you wish. The figure shows that preparations on Harrison Park are already underway, and the locations of tents and where the boats will land. Thanks, Krista. So, our budget. Riverfest has been run on a shoestring, really. Contributing partners are financing their own programs within the Riverfest umbrella. And the city has graciously provided shuttle bus service and has waived the park booking fees. But there's no money earmarked for publicity and signage.
So just to give a brief summary of how our budget is working, this whole dream started, the Riverfest concept started with Norm and Jeff Eli, and they asked me if I would like to be a participant. So Grace Sauble is an active participant on the Harrison Park Island on Sunday, July the 9th, celebrating our 60th anniversary, and I'm able to bring to the table $5,000 for costs of the event. WSP $500. And the in-kind contributions that we have received have almost reached the $12,000 mark, which I feel is absolutely fantastic for this community. The city partnership has been wonderful, and I thank Wayne Ritchie for his help to date, Doug Cleverly and Adam Parsons as well down at Harrison Park. We have submitted a grant application to Community Foundation Grey Bruce with our fingers crossed. But we are looking for additional sponsorship for that signage. We're just short about a couple $1,000. So we are persevering with the event, and I think it's just going to be a fantastic outcome.
So why does this matter? The awesome Sydenham Riverfest Extravaganza Adventure, it will live up to its name. It's going to be a fun, festive, and flamboyant day of discovery. But most of all, it will underpin the reasons why, like generations before us, we've all come to call this awesome place our home. The awesome Sydenham Riverfest Extravaganza Adventure has grassroots and community support. Hundreds of volunteer hours have already been spent on the project, and hundreds more are still to come. All of this is because community-minded people understand that the Sydenham River and Harrison Park are shared assets worth celebrating. So Riverfest seeks to strengthen that bond between the citizens of Owen Sound and the river system that they cherish. It's a celebration of the river and also of the people who lived along its bank through the ages. But most of all, it's to underpin the reasons why, like so many pioneers before us, we've all defined convention and come to call this awesome place our home. So thank you for your time and consideration, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councillor Kepke?
Not so much a question, but just to let you know, we're very excited to have you joining our Canada 150 Owen Sound 160 celebrations during that fantastic period of time that we're having those. And I think this will be a very special event, having a lot of the grassroots with it and tying in, like you say, the Sydenham and Harrison Park and a lot of the history of Owen Sound. I think it will be a great event. And you did mention that you are short a few dollars and looking for some sponsorship, maybe for some advertising signs or a banner or something. So hopefully somebody at home listening will come up to the plate and be a sponsor for that. We wish you well.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Wright?
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think it's wonderful to have a day like this, and it just looks really exciting to me. Now, when I read over the material, I read about busing that you didn't talk about that. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you're going to have busing available?
Do you want to turn just a little bit?
The elusive slide?
Yeah. Sorry about that. I wanted the slide to indicate where we'd be ending up. The busing.
Norm, would you talk into the microphone, please?
The busing we're proposing is the route of the water parade. So the busing would start at the Owen Sound West Side Harbor Launch, and after the people in the participating travel up to the dam, a bus would be available to shuttle them up to the dam. And then after they leave the dam, people seeing them there would be shuttled from the dam up to the Harrison Park Island. And what it has to do is to keep the number of cars out of the Harrison Park and keep it to a minimum.
So is this like a shuttle bus system that you're going to be running that bus back and forth during the day
Yes, it is.
from the West Side boat launch to Harrison Park?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any others? Normal, go ahead, Scott.
Thanks for the moment. I just want to take a moment to commend you and thank you for your efforts. I think there's many people downtown. I know personally when I walk to work, when you see someone early in the morning out kayaking or canoeing on the downtown river, it just establishes such a positive vibe in your downtown. And I just think it's wonderful what you're doing here. And just wanted to thank you for your efforts in bringing it, associating it with the 150, 160, because it's such an underused recreational pursuit, and it's just so great to see the boats out there. So thanks for your time and efforts.
Thank you. Councillor Lemon?
Thank you, Scott.
Well, having been one of the people involved with the Harrison Park 100th, I really commend you for picking up the idea of the sailing up the Sydenham. I think it's something that is very, very needed to celebrate the river, which is the heart, literally the heart of our community, and part of our community's heritage in that we have the harbor, but there used to be a lot of boats that were parked on the edge of the Sydenham between 8th and 9th and 9th and 10th. And I think it's really great what you're doing, and I commend you for all the effort and all the hard work that I know that goes into organizing this. And your mapping is simply terrific. That's a beautiful aerial view of that whole area. Thank you.
I reiterate and say thank you to the Rowing Club and the Conservation Authority for putting this together. I'm going to get you to hit the mic again and repeat date, time, how to get involved, what the connection is, email address or website, just so everyone is able to hear it again.
I'm getting a little croaky, but thank you, Councillor Lemon, and thank you, Mayor Boddy. The date of the event on the screen everybody can see, July 9th, 2017. The event starts at 10:30 for the launch, and we head up to the island, stop at the Mill Dam, and end up at the island around 12:50. And the events carry through till 4 p.m. on July 9th. It's a Sunday.
And website, if you want to be involved, is www.riverfest.sydenham.com.
Correct.
Good.
www.riverfest.sydenham.com.
Good, excellent.
We would love some volunteers. So we'll be working with Doug.
Get you step up again, Krista.
We'll be
Thanks.
working with Doug Cleverly as well in getting some volunteers put together. We'll also be posting on this website when we will have a call of volunteers, especially for those that are following the Friends of Harrison Park Facebook page. So we hope to get everyone in place and have an absolutely fantastic day. And good weather, of course.
Of course. Great, again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next up is number 9, public question period, but just thinking if you're here to support the volunteers, this is, and you don't want to listen, you can stay. We don't mind if you want to listen to us for the next hour, or 2 hours, but if you want to escape, this is probably a perfect time to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now
And for Norm and Kristen, the people that are interested in the Riverfest extravaganza, our report comes up about in about 2 minutes. So if you want to sit and wait, you'll know the answer before you go. So going back to the agenda, number 9, public question period. Is there anyone that has a question for council? I'm seeing none. Number 10 is correspondence received of which direction of council is required. And we have correspondence from the Owen Sound Housing Company Limited with regard to a loan request. Mr. Ritchie, do you want to give us?
Yes,
sort of
thank
a-
you, Your Worship. Certainly, the Owen Sound Housing Company has done, as we've heard earlier tonight, actually some tremendous work for the citizens of Owen Sound. And they are embarking on another project, the first phase of Adawa housing units. And they are looking for the city to assist them perhaps with financing that particular project. I have certainly been in discussion with the manager, and I am prepared to certainly support their recommendation that we look upon this as a loan from the city, as an investment for the city, and work out details between staff and come back with an agreement to council to approve this.
Councillor Lemon? Oh, sorry, I was going to go. Doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship. I would like to move recommendation that the negotiations take place. This would be a case of everyone winning, the city, the housing, which is, of course, part of the city, and the whole community of Owen Sound. And this is a valuable project, and those units are badly needed at this point, and this will help facilitate a good development that's positive for the community.
Councillor Lemon, I'm going to get you just to hold that motion. You've just supported it, but Councillor Kapke has it written out in a little more detail, perhaps.
That's fine.
So, my fault. Go ahead.
It's fine, Councillor Lemon's motion about the negotiating the terms of the agreement, but just to add, bring forward a bylaw to execute the agreement.
Yes, that I would consider a very friendly amendment.
Okay, so still Councillor Lemon's motion with that help. Does everyone understand it? Any questions? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So we're into reports of committees and city staff. So at 11A1 is the report on the Riverfest extravaganza.
Thank you, Worship. As you've heard from Mr. Bell and Ms. McKee tonight, the awesome Riverfest extravaganza is a tremendous partnership. It's exactly what the city was looking for in terms of our partners in celebrating Canada 150 and Owen Sound 160. And the report really provides an outline of the event, which you've heard tonight, and requests council's permission or approval to authorize a bylaw to execute an agreement with the group for the use of Harrison Park for the event. So as mentioned, the city will be running shuttles back and forth from the waterfront to Harrison Park to make sure that the event that's happening at the waterfront and the event at Harrison Park are well connected. You'll see that the details of the event are there. The conditions of the agreement really reflect a standard agreement, things like insurance, licensing, smoke-free, waste and recycling, etc. So the recommendation, Your Worship, is that Council would approve the request by the Conservation Authority Community Relations Coordinator, and that you would approve the use of Harrison Park and execute an agreement subject to the conditions outlined and authorize that bylaw.
Councillor Kepke, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd be pleased to move that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. There we go. Done. Number 2 is probably Ms. Coulter again with regard to broomball championships.
Your Worship, in 2015 and 16, the Kilsyth Phantoms, being represented by Ryan Gregg, hosted really successful provincial and national broomball events in the city's 2 recreation facilities. This year, they're requesting approval to host the Canadian Championships in juvenile broomball April 2nd till 6th in 2018. So it will include 16 teams, about 250 players, their family, fans, and officials from across Canada. The event is for minors, so the event itself won't be licensed, although they are looking at licensing the attack den for dignitaries during the event, and the alcohol again, or the banquet again, will not be licensed. So it is a national event, and as per Council's policy, they will be eligible for a 30% reduction in their facility rental. The agreement is very much like others we've executed with broomball in the past. The revenue for the city is nearly just over $12,000, including the $1,500 reduction reflecting the national event. So, Your Worship, the recommendation is that you would authorize a bylaw to allow the mayor and clerk to execute the agreement with Ryan Gregg for the use of the Julie MacArthur Regional Rec Center in Bayshore, April 2nd to 6th, for that National Juvenile Broomball Championship.
Councillor Dodd?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd be more than happy to move this recommendation. It's great to see another national competition coming to our region. And with that extra income there, it kind of helps drop down the deficit from our facilities. So it's great.
Good, thank you. All in favor? Well, I guess I was supposed to ask. That was carried. I guess I was supposed to ask if there's any comments, but I didn't. I thought everyone was on, so that did carry. Number 3, report on Sydenham Heights trunk sanitary sewer.
Thank you, Your Worship. In accordance with the direction of Council, staff carried out Class EA for this project, which will extend services into the Sydenham Heights secondary planning area and spur on development of this area. The project will consist of the construction of a 600 diameter sanitary trunk sewer along the rail trail alignment from 16th Street to 8th Street, and then along 8th Street up to the future intersection with 20th Avenue. In order to provide water service to the planning area, about 500 meters of 300 diameter trunk water main will be extended from its current terminus at 16th Avenue easterly along 8th Street to the future intersection with 20th Avenue. This will allow, put the servicing in place so that the development community can then start to develop the adjoining lands. Tenders for the proposed work were called in accordance with city policy, and 6 contractors submitted bids. The bid received from Moorfield Excavation Limited was determined to be non-compliant due to a failure to meet a mandatory requirement relating to the bid bond. The bid bond was not fully compliant for the irrevocable period of 60 days. The lowest compliant bid then was received from SMRS Construction in the amount of $2,150,380.53. In the financial section of the budget,
or financial section of the report, the table provides the budget for the project, and as you can see, the budget for construction was $2,800,000. So the bid received is well within the available funding authority. The engineering contracted admin and inspection services are estimated to cost in the order of $175,000. The current balance of authority is $114,761.73. So we are over. We will project an overage in that area of the budget by $60,000, but funds are available in the contingency to cover that overage. So there's no concern there. In the category of right-of-ways, we've expended about $760 on an easement agreement, formulation of an easement agreement with the county in order to have permission to put the trunk sewer in the rail trail alignment. We expect there may be some additional costs with respect to legal surveys and the like. So a $10,000 allowance is provided in the budget to be taken from the contingency. Utility conflicts and so forth are estimated at $50,000. We don't expect that we will require all of that budget, but nonetheless we are carrying that. That will leave the contingency at $230,000, which is well over 10% of the value of the construction. So I'm comfortable that we have an adequate contingency to see us through the project. On that basis, the project is fully. There are sufficient funds within the budget to fully fund the project. And therefore, the recommendation from staff is that the construction contract be awarded to SMRS Construction, the lowest compliant bid in the amount of $2,150,380.53. Secondly, the council approved the extension of the service agreement with GM Blue Plan for the provision of contract administration and inspection services and post-construction services in the amount of $175,000. And finally, the council approve of the attached easement agreement with the county of Grey and pass a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the agreement on behalf of the corporation.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
I would like to move that recommendation, Your Worship.
Okay. Discussion, questions? Councillor Lemon?
Yes, the contingency amount that's being carried on this, I'm assuming that those funds cannot be expended without the agreement of the committee or with council, whatever.
That is handled by staff as an administrative authority. Other? Call the question then. All in favor? That's carried. So given that this sort of feels like our own little creation, in a sense that this council has worked on this, and this is the biggest step yet of proceeding with the contract to get it done. And we've chipped away at engineering, we've chipped away at environmental studies, and there's no doubt we'll have a benefit for 20 years to come as that whole area gets developed. So it's great to get this passed. So thank you. Go ahead.
I think that council should also be aware of that the county and the city are joining and putting the equipment through so that we can have high speed. So that's all going to be installed at the same time.
So the fiber will be laid with. At this point, Your Worship, we're still in discussions with the county. There seems to be some concern if it's the right thing to do at this particular point in time. Nonetheless, we will continue in discussions on that regard.
Well, I think it's something that we would like to see happen from both from the county and city perspective, from where I'm sitting.
Certainly from the city's perspective. As I say, we're still in discussion at this point.
Good. Thank you. Number 4, report from the city manager with regard to the review of the strategic plan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tonight we'll be reviewing the City of Owen Sound 2015 Strategic Plan 2020, Making Our Vision Clear. Council and the public, working together, developed a roadmap for what they want Owen Sound to be. That led to our vision for Owen Sound, which is Owen Sound, where you want to live. Once we had a vision, we needed to define how we could make it happen. What was our mission? The mission for council, staff, and the community is strengthening our community through sound leadership. This defines how we will accomplish the vision, through sound leadership. In order to focus the plan to make Owen Sound where you want to live, 4 focus areas or pillars were established. These were the economy, the environment, finances, social, society, and culture. Built around these pillars are 15 objectives and 41 actions. These objectives and actions provide us concrete goals and a route to achieving them. Tonight, we will refocus on the objectives and some of the advancements Council has made on them. So, objective number 1, retain and grow existing local business and business opportunities. Home-based business licenses issued have increased. In 2014, we had 10, 2016, or 15, we had 13, and 2016, we issued 14. River Precinct project continues in 2017 and beyond. Certainly, as we heard this evening, we all value the river and harbour front. Urban municipalities need a strong downtown. Our river and harbour should be focal attractions. Implementation of the Riverfront Precinct project will be a big step towards that. Downtown revitalization project final in 2017. In collaboration with the DIA, OMAFRA, and the Business Enterprise Center, this will provide real insights into the downtown commercial landscape. Our Director of Corporate Services, or Community Services, should have that planned before Economic Development Committee May 19th. So progress made, Your Worship. Objective number 2, develop a coordinated approach to attract new investment and encourage development. Team approach is being used at City Hall with new development proposals. 14 site plans were reviewed in 2016 using that one-stop shopping approach. The community should see a number of these being constructed in 2017. Lease of the former CP rail station for a brew pub at the harbourfront. Council and staff have worked to bring this property to the market, and the community is excited to see this goal go ahead. Objective number 3, leverage our city's assets in order to enhance tourism opportunities. 2017, we launched the new city and tourism websites. We are committed to keeping these sites current, accurate, and user-friendly. Working with the county to ensure presence at a number of tourism attraction opportunities in 2017. The county is working to get the Grey County message out, and there is a real opportunity for all lower tiers to maximize their budgets via the county's presence in that field. Objective number 4, encourage residential and mixed-use development. Council extended residential development charges moratorium for a further 2 years. Site plans under review include a good mix of developments. Currently, we see several condominium projects, several multi-residential apartment complexes, several mixed-use residential site plans, and a site plan from the Owen Sound Nonprofit Housing Company. That is quite a broad range of residential development in this town, Your Worship. Objective number 5 was to attract new and retain existing residents. I'm going to keep this one rather close to our vest tonight, Your Worship, but within the next 2 weeks you will see the city launch an attraction campaign. Certainly I will tell you staff is excited about it, and I'm sure council and the community will be as well when it comes forward. Objective number 6, promote and enhance Owen Sound's built heritage. The community improvement plan is promoted with developers. Particularly with brownfield and vacant sites, the CIP can offer real assistance. Working with development proponents to repurpose the former jail and courthouse as well as the former CP rail station. One of these is nearly complete, and the other proponents are working very hard to make their concept a reality. These types of reuses can't be done by the city alone. We need developers with a vision to repurpose these sites, and we've been very fortunate, Your Worship, in the past 12 months to find 2 developers with that vision. Objective number 7, encourage and promote participation in cultural activities and active lifestyles. I believe this evening, Your Worship, we heard an earlier delegation certainly that helps the city with that goal. Investment in parks, trails, and special events, use of facilities and sports fields is subsidized for adults and increased subsidies for youth. Our parks and trail systems are valued by city residents and visitors alike. Council invests significant capital funds to keep these assets an attraction today and in the future. Objective number 8, support community safety and social inclusion. Support for the community garden and the reconciliation garden on public lands. We have tremendous partners for both of these great inclusionary projects. Support for the McQuay Tannery and Harrison Park Senior Centers. Work with police and fire services to provide safety to residents in a manner and cost similar to like communities, Your Worship. Objective number 9, address the city's infrastructure deficit. Asset management plan currently includes most of the city's capital assets. Integration into day-to-day processes is underway in 2017. Like many urban municipalities, our infrastructure is aging. Council isn't ignoring those facts, but is asking staff to prepare plans to maximize the use of our capital assets and to help plan for their future replacement. Objective number 10, maximize revenue sources and funding opportunities. Again, Your Worship, the development team is working very hard to increase build-outs in 2017 and beyond. Several new sponsorship and advertising funds have come on stream in 2017. Thanks very much to the commitment of our staff to find those for us. Objective 11, optimize the city's operations while maintaining or improving quality of life. Our service review was completed in 2016, Your Worship. This resulted in little service impact to our residents, but overall savings to them of just under $900,000. Objective number 12, maintain and improve transit options for residents and visitors. Investment in new bus stops and bus shelters will be made in 2017. We have started an advertising and promotion campaign in 2017, hopefully to increase ridership and use of that service. Staff have worked to have Greyhound return to the depot, and excess space has also been rented out to reduce overall costs for transit users. Objective 13, improve energy conservation and efficiency. City street lights converted to LED fixtures. Energy audits are scheduled for a number of city-owned facilities in 2017. All energy savings will be reviewed using a business case and payback criteria. Objective 14, maintain, improve, and promote the use of our local parks and trails. Update to the Recreation Parks and Facilities Master Plan in 2017, Your Worship, will include a parks rationalization study. Certainly through service review, staff, and I'm sure Council heard how important and valued our parks and trail system is to the public. This will help us make sure we get it right, Your Worship. Objective number 15, ensure the responsible management of natural resources. Staff have reduced the application of salt for winter road maintenance. We certainly found we might be above the provincial norms, and we are bringing our application of those resources down to the provincial norms. The wastewater treatment plant, my colleague is happy to tell me we are virtually complete at this time, and that should be on stream and fully functioning, certainly improving the effluent that goes back into Georgian Bay, Your Worship. And we have taken a proactive approach to the emerald, ash borer, and Phragmites issues that have certainly been on our front pages for the last few years. In conclusion, Your Worship, you have a strategic plan that the community helped to create, and in the past 12 months, you have made significant progress on many of the objectives in that plan to further its vision of Owen Sound, where you want to live. Attachment A is the strategic plan action tables. This provides information on all 41 actions recommended in the plan, comparing the benchmarks to the most current data. Certainly we feel as staff, the strategic plan is an important document. We've referred to it often, and everything we do on behalf of the ratepayer should agree to the vision they have for the city of Owen Sound, and certainly we will be open to any questions Council may have, Your Worship.
Questions? Anyone? Councillor Gregg?
I just maybe would point out, it, just as it was explained there, kind of read that we've just eliminated or reduced salt application, but we've actually looked for safer and more environmentally friendly alternatives. And I would obviously defer to the Director of Operations just to explain that, but I just wanted to point that out, like that just read that we reduced salt and we're trying, and you know, just letting the road conditions deteriorate, but that's not the intent.
Your Worship, the councillor is correct. The salt that we are using, treated salt, is actually less corrosive than conventional or normal road salt. So it has a reduced impact on vehicles and also on the environment.
But we have cut back and tried to control the amount that's being put down?
That is correct, Your Worship.
So it's a combination of both?
Combination of both, that is correct.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Seeing none. I think we've got a recommendation there somewhere. Councillor Kepke?
I'll move that we receive the report.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Ritchie, and to staff that have been working on this, this report, but working on the strategic plan all the way along. In my 6 or 7 years, and my fellow councillors have been around longer, I don't ever recall an actual report coming back in strategic plan on this previous strategic plan to give us that update. And it's so important to have measurable goals and keep going after those goals and making sure that we're on track. So we certainly appreciate the annual update. Anyone else? Okay. So I think we're down to number 5, report from City Manager with regard to Deputy Fire Chief.
Thank you, Your Worship. This recommendation is that City Council approves the recruitment of a Deputy Fire Chief. The City of Owen Sound Fire Department consists of 26 suppression firefighters, 1 training officer, 1 prevention inspector, 1 prevention officer, 1 chief, and a part-time administrative assistant. Since January of 2017, Chief Barfoot has been the only full-time management staff. With a service that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, this is not a sustainable model. Most full-time fire services operate with a chief and at least 1 deputy chief. This allows for sharing of many of the functions and responsibilities that go with managing a fire service. Some of these shared responsibilities include on-call duty, holiday coverage, staying current with changing legislation and firefighting techniques, incident command when required, etc. Another important shared responsibility is managing the contract with 29 members of the Firefighters Association. City of Owen Sound Fire Captain with 20 years experience will be paid $121,000 in 2017, not including overtime. We suggest that the salary listed for this recruitment be $119,000 to $135,000, Your Worship. A deputy chief would complement the chief in providing fire protection to the community and leadership to our firefighters. And with that, Your Worship, we are asking that you approve the recruitment of the deputy fire chief.
Discussion, Councillor Lemon?
Has a motion been moved?
No?
I will move the recommendation. I strongly support this. I think this is a step forward, and it's something that's long overdue.
Others? Okay, the rest of you that were in the room, do you have any comments? I'm seeing none. All in favor? That is carried. Next is Director of Community Services with regard to Art Crawl.
Thank you, Worship. Art Crawl has used the Percy England Parquet for several years, and Art Crawl is really a group of local crafters who make and sell a wide variety of items in that area north of City Hall. It certainly adds attraction to the downtown and has reinforced the link between the market and the main street. The event happens on Saturday mornings between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. Each year, the group pays a small fee of $30, and they use that to market and promote the event. In the last few years, Council has granted permission for the use, subject to a number of conditions. This year, the space traditionally occupied by the Art Crawl is unavailable, and I would just ask the clerk if we can go to the map at the end of the report. So we met together with the representatives of Art Crawl and have come up with an alternative for this year, and really it's an opportunity to test drive what will be great space once we get the Downtown River Precinct Plan implemented. So we're proposing that we would use the area on the west side of the sidewalk on First Avenue East, above the riverbank. Now, there are areas there where there's more and less space. So our park staff will lay out 10 by 10 booths for use by the vendors and make sure that they have spaces that have sufficient depth to do that. In the past, council hasn't asked for insurance, but rather you have had the group provide an indemnification from each of the vendors, as well each of the individual crafters is encouraged to obtain their own insurance. There are a number of conditions recommended, and very much they reflect previous years, with the exception of the location. The art crawl is also requested as a group to retain one, or to obtain one hawker and peddler license. So the recommendation, Your Worship, is that in consideration of the staff report respecting the use of the top of the riverbank on the west side of First Avenue East in the 800 block, Council would approve the request by the Owen Sound Art Crawl for the use of the space from May 20th to September 3rd, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. each week on Saturdays, subject to the conditions outlined.
So to be clear, this is on the lawn, right along the sidewalk, just along First Avenue East, right by the farmers market.
I would move that recommendation.
Discussion, Councillor Kepke?
Just a question on the hawker and peddler license. Is that one license for the whole duration?
Through Your Worship, yes, it would be one license for the entire summer and one license for the group of crafters.
All in favor? That is carried. Number 7, under 11A is from Manager of Parks and Open Spaces with regard to Harrison Park and Kelso Beach security.
Thank you, Worship. Security at Harrison Park and Kelso Beach, as well as other locations in the city, has been done historically by 3 parks seasonal staff. In 2016, our staff had raised concern about safety. They work an evening and an overnight shift. So when we looked at this during the operating season, it was determined that the concerns raised by staff were around safety and working alone. And when we reviewed the Private Security and Investigative Services Act, it recently updated to require that everyone performing security would be licensed, and our staff weren't. So there were different options when we looked at this, and one was re-looking at how we would train our staff, but one was going out to an RFP for the provision of this service. So the report really provides some background on that RFP and then talks about next steps. So the RFP was issued in accordance with the city's purchasing bylaw. It was scored by a panel of staff, and the scoring criteria are listed in the report for you. The outcome is that Neptune Security Services out of Mississauga, Neptune has a number of, you'll see one of the criteria was related experience and references. They have several municipal clients and excellent references. We have been speaking with QP443 about this change, and it doesn't impact any current workers as the number of seasonal staff can fluctuate. Some choose not to come back, so there was no one issued a layoff notice as a result of this RFP. So the recommendation is that we would engage Neptune for a period of 1 year. In terms of finances, eliminating 2 seasonal positions results in a savings of just over $40,000 for the city, and the cost of this contract will be $24,000, so recognizing a savings for the city of about $16,000. So, Your Worship, the recommendation is that you authorize the purchasing agent to issue a PO in the amount of $24,000 for the provision of security services at Harrison Park and Kelso Beach, in accordance with our purchasing bylaw to Neptune Security from Mississauga.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary?
Thank you, Worship. I'd be glad to move that recommendation.
Welcome back. Anyone else? Councillor Kepke?
Just a question on the scoring. The weighting equals 100 points. The scoring, could the scoring potentially equal 100 points as well?
It's a very good question. I wasn't one of the scorers, so I'd have to get back to you on that.
I just thought, since it's only a little over 50 for the score, I wondered if that really was a high enough score to look at this. But anyway, it's just a question.
I would indicate that the manager of parks has indicated that, that the proposals were excellent, and so I don't think the score is a score out of 100.
I don't know, Councillor Kepke, I was always pretty happy to get 50.83. All right, maybe not. Councillor O'Leary moved it. Councillor Lemon?
A question, with the problems we've had in certain areas in Harrison Park, was any consideration also given to cameras, security cameras?
Through your worship, we are working with Owen Sound Police Services on the latest incident at Harrison Park, so that, all I would say is that we are working with police services on that.
So, right there, Peter. Can you call the question? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Sam, I think this is your night. The next one is event facilitator for Ontario 150 tour agreement.
Sorry, Your Worship. In October, the Canada 150 Owen Sound 160 Committee had approved a business plan to really participate in the Ontario Red Path 150 tour. We're in excellent company. The city was selected to be part of that tour, along with Toronto, Sault Ste. Marie, Midland, Amherstburg, and Brockville. So this report really is about an agreement with Ontario 150, very similar to the agreement we had with Tall Ships. So this group is Water's Edge Festival, is the group that will be bringing the large duck to Owen Sound on the second weekend of our Festival Canadiana. They did receive a Blockbuster grant in the amount of $300,000, and the city will be benefiting from that with the different events and things that are happening, and in particular with respect to the promotion and marketing of our event as well as the Red Path event. The agreement does provide that the city will cover specific programming, so those are things like production electricity and specific hospitality requirements. And the city will give them $5,000 for marketing for Owen Sound. But the Waterfront Festival has confirmed that the city will also receive at least $5,000 in corporate sponsorship in exchange for display space for the sponsor during the event. So that ends up being a net zero. So the recommendation is that council would authorize a bylaw to allow the mayor and clerk to execute that agreement with Water's Edge Festivals and Events to host the Ontario 150 tour.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Thomas?
So moved.
See no other hands go up. So no questions. All in favor? That is carried. So next is purchasing agent, sanitary collection system. Mr. Becking.
Thank you, Your Worship. As council is aware, a number of the city's storm and sanitary sewers are quite aged. We've been undertaking a program of cammering all of the pipes in the city. Those have been prioritized, and we've identified a number of pipes, some almost 1,900 meters of which can be corrected or rehabilitated using what's called CIPP. CIPP stands for cured in place pipe or polymer pipe. It's a non-destructive or trenchless approach to rehabilitation of underground infrastructure, and amounts to essentially, if you can imagine a sausage casing, an empty sausage casing that's pulled from one manhole through to the other manhole.
and then the pipe is, or the sleeve is expanded using high-pressure steam. That causes the polymers in the pipe to cure and become an integral structural component of the pipe. So any pipe where we're concerned about breaks or cracks or fissures or anything like that can be repaired without having to excavate and totally replace the pipe. Bids were called in accordance with city policy. 4 bids were received. The lowest compliant bid was received from In Situ Form Technologies Limited, who I have worked with in the past on projects of this nature, and I know them to be highly qualified and capable to do the work. The lowest bid was received was $413,888. The budget breakdown is provided in the table within the report. You'll notice that the budget for construction is only $340,000 compared to the $413,888. That leaves a shortfall of about $51,000. The rest of the items are within budget parameters. So the staff recommendation is that council award the contract to In Situ Form Technologies Limited, the lowest compliant bid, and we will scale back the scope of the work to keep the final cost within the budgeted amount. Questions?
Seeing none. Councillor Gregg?
I'd move that recommendation.
Further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thanks. Number 10 is a verbal report from Deputy Mayor Wright with regard to Grey County Council.
Thank you very much. There's not a lot to report, however, we did start off our county meeting with the introduction of the new $10 bill that is going to have Agnes MacPhail on, and we found that this has been known by Grey Roots, a member of Grey Roots staff, for over a year, and she has had to keep this one quiet because of the circumstances. And while we were all trying to push Agnes MacPhail on a bill to the Canadian government, she already was going on a bill, and that $10 bill is going to be unveiled out at Grey Roots in a short time. So that was pretty exciting stuff. We have the presentation about broadband, and within 5 years, fiber optics will reach all of Grey County, and phase 1, hopefully phase 1 will get going. We invested a fair chunk of money in broadband, and hopefully that will move along. The city has received $5,000 towards our project to promote a targeted people and workforce attraction marketing campaign, as was mentioned under objective number 5 by our city manager. That's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Deputy Mayor Wright? Seeing none. Thank you. Verbal report from Councillor Kepke with regard to our celebrations for this year.
Thank you, Your Worship. Highlights for May the 9th to May the 29th. Saturday, May 13th, the Georgian Bay Symphony present an orchestral concert entitled From Russia with Love. Sunday, May 14th is Mother's Day. Monday the 15th, there will be a special council meeting to deal with a public meeting on a zoning bylaw amendment, and details on that can be found on the city's website. Thursday, May the 18th, from 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., there will be the One World Festival to celebrate diversity in Grey and Bruce, which will take place along 1st Avenue West between 8th Street West and 9th Street West, with activities at St. Andrew's Church, the Tom Thompson Art Gallery, and the Owen Sound and North Grey Union Public Library. Saturday, May 20th, will be the Georgian Bay Garden Club's annual plant sale from 12 noon to 3 p.m. at the Harrison Park Community Center. Monday, May 22nd is Victoria Day. Saturday, May 27th, from a concert at 4 p.m. and at 8 p.m., the Owen Sound City Band will present with Toronto-based Swing State Big Band, a Canada 150 musical spectacular at the Owen Sound District Secondary School, which is the former West Hill School. On Saturday, May 27th marks the beginning of Ramadan, and also on Saturday, May 27th will be the opening of Betwixt and Between, the Untold Story at the Tom. And next regular council meeting will be Monday, May the 29th.
Good, thank you. Any questions? Was that a question, Jim? Oh, sorry. Thank you. 11B is consent agenda items.
To you, your worship, on the consent agenda are minutes for receipt from the Police Services Board and the Library Board, and there's correspondence received which is presented for the information of council. A full listing is available at 11B3.
Thank you.
Moved by myself, your worship, that the city council receive items 11B1 to 11B3 on the consent agenda dated May 8th, 2017.
All in favor? That is carried. So the first one was Police Services Board. Councillor O'Leary, anything to report on that?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have February collision statistics. There's 20 accidents on the east, 7 on the west. The main causes of accidents during the month were attributed to persons failing to yield right of way and following too close. Traffic enforcement, there's 101 charges under the Highway Traffic Act, 6 under the Liquor License Act, 56 under the Criminal Code. There were 128 hours of foot patrol in the downtown area and 5 hours in high schools. There were a total of 17 ride checks in February with 582 drivers checked and 0 impaired driving charges. There were 3 additional provincially funded ride checks with 1,061 drivers checked and 2 impaired drivers charged. The auxiliary unit, there was a new class of 13 volunteers in February excited to join the police services. These new recruits will partake in training 2 nights a week from 7 to 10 p.m. until their graduation in April 2018. Community Services Office, in February, the CSO attended a vigil held at the City Hall for the deaths of the Canadian Muslim community. Several schools were visited, including Hillcrest, where the CSO assisted in developing a student safety plan for an at-risk student. Notre Dame, Bayview, and Sydenham School administration and students were also engaged in discussions involving future partnership opportunities. And finally, average response time for 911 calls in February were 7 minutes and 8 seconds.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor O'Leary? Seeing none, next is Councillor Thomas, Library Board.
Thanks, Your Worship. What an exciting meeting we had. Of course, they all are at the library. It's such an exciting place. It would hardly be a library report without some mention of our elevator. The saga continues. We are quite optimistic that there's less water coming into the elevator pit now than there once was, though there still is water coming into the elevator pit, and we continue to work on that with some great degree of optimism. And the only other thing I'll point out from this meeting is we heard a lot about Grey County being named one of the top 7 intelligent communities of 2017 by the Intelligent Community Forum, and I just wanted to point out to Council and those listening at home that one of the initiatives that helped Grey County get on the radar was the Excellence in Library-Based Technology training at the Owen Sound and North Grey Union Public Library. And I do believe the library was a part of the tour for the group when they were here.
Questions? Thank you. 11C, minutes of boards and committees for approval. First one is Accessibility Advisory Committee. Councillor Lemon?
Yes, Your Worship, I would move approval of the minutes for that committee. One of the things we're looking at is the lack of sharps containers in public buildings, and there'll be more follow-up on that as we determine whether that is a systemic part of our barrier to accessibility.
And anything else from the minutes you want to report?
Yes, there were site plans which were approved with some recommendations, and those will be coming forward. It's been very busy with site plans this year, which is good news on a long-term basis.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Lemon? So he's moving approval of those minutes. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next is, I think, Councillor Kepke, minutes from 150, 160.
Thank you, Your Worship. At our meeting held on May the 2nd, we dealt with some ideas that were presented for the beautification of Owen Sound during our 160th anniversary. And there's a recommendation in the report for various items to be considered in the next capital budget allocation. And also we received a verbal update on Celebration 2017. And one of those items received was the the 160-150 challenge, which has been issued by the city for various sponsorship of 160 people at $150, and the deadline for that has been extended to May the 15th. I don't know how we're doing with that, and staff can maybe report that.
Through Your Worship, yes, the challenge has been extended. It will be extended into June, I believe, and donations are starting to roll in. So the challenge is catching on. So if you or your business want to support the event, just contact Doug Cleverly in Community Services.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, Your Worship, I'll move approval of the minutes.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Third was minutes of Community Services Committee.
Thank you, Worship. I would like to say that Councillor Thomas thinks the Library Board is one of the most exciting committees, but I'd have to disagree and say Community Services is definitely the bigger doozy of those two. So we had a deputation, first off, by Susan Shank. Susan Shank is the chair of the Reconciliation Garden Committee. She was giving us a little bit of a history and a background on a project that is potentially going to go into Kelso Beach. So her goals of the project for a memory garden, as I said, down at Kelso Beach, was to acknowledge our first people's presence in the past, present, and future on the traditional territory, to reclaim a peace and culture, ecology, and wellness, and to educate all nations about the legacy of residential schools, and to help build strong relationships and mutual understanding and balance. With this, we went into actually a report from the manager of Parks and Open Spaces about the garden. A little more depth on the history of Kelso Beach Park as the site of the First Nations of Nawash settlement. We also were presented with a detailed landscape design brought forth by the Reconciliation Garden Committee about what they would like to do in this region. Some of those features of design were a small sitting circle with grandfather and grandmother stones, a medicine wheel garden that incorporates raised plantings of traditional medicinal herbs and seating walls and walkways, and a pedestrian mounted sturgeon sculpture in a stream leading to Great Sturgeon Bay. Thomas Dean, who is the landscape architect for this project, also has been a big assistance to some of the voluntary in the past about being volunteer with the new trees we could potentially go into the community. He had asked the committee to reconsider the removal of 2 English oak trees, purely based on the cultural reasons and the spirit of reconciliation. These 2 trees are not native trees in the first place. They were planted in 1982, so they aren't old heritage trees. These are non-native trees for our region. And the garden committee was proposing to plant 4 sacred native trees in replace of these 2 trees. And the 2 trees, in further discussion, kind of came out that they were being crowded anyways, and one of the trees wasn't really necessarily going to be having a long lifespan anyways. So the committee came into an agreement that the 4 sacred native trees would be a little bit more a better suit for the area, especially considering of the backing of the reconciliation. After that, we received another report from Parks and Open Space regarding the West Rocks. Rock climbing, this was just basically an update from something that we had discussed back when we were still in our old chambers about creating a management plan for a recreation management plan for the climbers. Mr. Parsons had let us know that he had put forward the permit process, and it should take about approximately 12 to 16 weeks. And with that permit becoming successful, we'd come up with our own permit process for allowing rock climbing in that area for both single users and groups that could come to the city and apply for a permit. Following that, we went into something that came out from our service review was a policy and implementation for posting public notice. Currently, we just, if there's something for a site plan or anything like that, we normally now send it through the Sun-Times. Sorry, Denis. It was about $15,000 for 5 years of what we had paid into the Sun-Times ads. We kind of looked into finding other cost savings ways of doing it, and looked into some of our neighbors, both from Georgian Bluffs, Collingwood, Brockville, just seeing kind of what they do for those situations. And one of the things that came back from our our intern co-op student, Wyatt came back with noting that a lot of other municipalities currently do this, is just putting a sign on the location opposed to putting it into the newspaper. So Wyatt did a really good job on this, and so one of the things he came out with was we could put a chloroplast sign, which would be similar to an election-based sign with an H-frame stand on it, and we follow the same guidelines, the same rulings that we currently do. We have to give proper notice and everything along with those, but it'd be a huge cost savings. I think for our initial cost with the signs were $1,000, opposed to, I think in 2016 we spent $5,000 alone on advertising through the Sun-Times. So as time goes on, the chloroplast signs are really only meant for a temporary 1-year trial basis to see if this actually is picked up by the community, if it's liked by the community, and if it is, and we go forward, there is a stronger sign that can be used for longer purposes. So like I said, that would be for a 1-year trial period for that sign. Following this, Councillor Lemon, you'll like some of this. We decided to look at the zoning bylaw for permit food processing. So this is one of the things that only in M1 and M2 zone regions that we'd be able to open up the door for the zoning bylaw to allow some sort of food processing. Still a lot of restrictions. Councillor McManaman during the meeting was kind of, I don't know if he was upset or not, but the boiling of blood and bones is still prohibited from the city. So this will be a new thing that will be allowed in the zoning, though, would just be allowed for the food processing. So this would be a change in our current zoning bylaw, but it would be opening the door to new investment and potentially some new businesses that could come into our area. And just for the public's knowledge, M1 and M2 is mostly in our industrial zones. There is an MU state, which is mixed use, but closer down to the harbor. But so, Councillor Lemon, I know when you want to get that sheep slaughtering house, we still can't do it down by the harbor. So after that, we finished off with 2 facade grants, one going to the former Victorious Living Center down on 2nd Avenue, which has recently been purchased into being used as office space and some apartments, I believe. So there's going to be a facade grant going there, and also another facade grant going on the former McKay building, done by the Artist Co-op. Perfect. Thank you, Pam. And that is our meeting. So I would make a motion to approve of these minutes.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor, Deputy Mayor Wright first.
Thank you. Regarding the garden, the timelines to start that?
I'm going to pass this off to Pam. I believe they are on a tight guideline by 2018 or 2017, based off of the funding that they're getting.
So it's not going to happen within the next couple of months?
I think they're hopeful that they will be ready, at least in part, for an unveiling or a sod turning as part of the Canada 150 celebration.
Okay, so I'm just going to request that those 2 oak trees not be cut down till after the nesting season. Because I was by it just last week, and there are nests in those 2 trees. So if we could just wait until the nesting season is over to cut those trees.
The one thing, I guess, just for the public knowledge, where this garden is potentially going to be, or is proposed to being, is right across the bridge on the south end of the Kelso Beach, where you're just coming into the entrance across the bridge. It'd be going there up on top of the hill, and where those rocks or the 2 current trees are on top of the landing, that was a man-made hill, and that's where we're going to be proposing to have that nice little lookout for the garden. So, but I'm sure that could be something to talk to Susan.
There are nests in those trees, so don't cut them till they're done.
So it's noted. Councillor Lemon?
Well, I'm very pleased that we're going to allow agricultural processing. One of the things to realize is every time be it livestock, be it grains, go down to Toronto for processing. We're exporting jobs from this area. As an example, canola, 57% of Ontario's canola crop is grown in Grey Bruce and close by surrounding areas. And this is going down to Toronto for processing. It'd be so much more beneficial to our farmers if that could be processed here, and the byproducts could be used for cattle feed, etc. So it's a step in the right direction, because we are in the middle of a very large agricultural area. And you mentioned the possibility of lamb or sheep, but there are other things that could be processed here. We did have some processing up there with fish for a few years, or a number of years, and so this may be something to look forward to. It creates jobs. And say at some point, like we've approved a small operation in the CPR station, the brewer's grains could certainly go out to livestock feed. So there's a back and forth benefit. And I've pushed this for many years, as you're well aware, and I will continue to push, because let's not export jobs out of this area. Let's keep them here.
Thank you. So, all in favor of approval of those minutes? That is carried. Last set is Operations Committee.
Thank you very much. Our meeting was held on April 27th. We had a presentation, a public meeting, and a presentation by Alan Brownwood of CC Tatum and Sons regarding the 6th Street West, 5th Avenue West to 8th Avenue West water main replacement. We had a presentation by Rebecca Kinsley, accommodating visually impaired residents, and there is a report coming back to council.
Your microphone closer. Just
My
pull it
microphone,
Just pull the whole thing closer.
is that better?
Let's see.
Okay. Then we had an interesting presentation by Bruce Davidson and David Ross, recycling film plastic. There is a market for it. They're recycling in Walkerton and a number of places around us, so Chris Hughes has taken that, and we are under contract to Miller, so he will be dealing with Miller on that to see if we can get recycle our plastic. We've had a request to change the bus route for a new stop at Ordnance Park. At this time, the decision has been deferred until we get further information. The airport report, we are going to authorize the use of $15,000 of capital funding intended for the equipment storage to seal the runway at this time. We also were informed that the CYOS have advised that they will no longer wish to manage the Billy Bishop Airport, and the city will be looking for management for the airport. There'll be an RFP go out for that. Regarding the Blue Communities, there was a report brought approximately a year ago that kind of fell through the cracks, so it came back to this committee, and we moved and approved that report, or are recommending that the city approve that report, and that was with regard to water, banning bottled water, and of course the question is that we are under contract here to Pepsi, so that was pulled from that contract, and we just fulfilled the rest of what was done a year ago on the committee with the Blue Community. They seem quite happy with that. They're coming back in July to do another presentation with regard to bottled water. We had a report from Engineering Services regarding school crossing guard assignments. With the change of schools in the city of Owen Sound, there is a change of crossing guards, and that report is attached. And any parent that is wondering about crossing guards, it will be on our website where the crossing guards will be located with a map. That map is attached to your minutes, as you already know, but that will be put on the web so that parents will know what corners crossing guards will be provided by the city. We talked about snow removal for the downtown core, the cost of it, and at this time we are leaving it in the hands of our staff. There was a motion put through by that in consideration respecting snow clearing and removal for the roads and sidewalks in the downtown core. The Operations Committee recommended that Public Works clear the snowbanks from the downtown core within 5 days of December 10th, and that the banks not exceed 0.6 of a meter in height. So staff will keep their eye on that and act accordingly. We have a report regarding putting a bus shelter at the library stop that we are recommending that not be done at this time, simply because we're not sure when the 10th Street Bridge goes in, we're not sure what's going to happen to that road, and we, rather than put a bus stop there and have to project into the road area and remove parking spots, that we would defer that until such time that we knew what was going on with the action. Actually, they recommended that it not be installed at this location. Water and wastewater. Now this is very interesting, and I was very fortunate to have had a tour this week of the wastewater treatment plant, and I just thought it was time that we brought the public a little bit up to date on how we're spending $48 million from the city. So I thought to give you an example of what I saw, and it was most interesting, and and most of you have already seen it, but to show the public, I've got some examples here, and I'm going to ask for Ken to help me, but this is what happens, and I hope that you're all in good mood. But when you flush your toilet and something like this effluent ends up going through the pipes and all the way over to our sanitary system, what it goes through that system, the number of steps it takes. Ken, this is primary. Do you want to explain primary? Because after it goes through all the steps, it goes from this color to this color. You want to explain that?
Certainly, through you, Your Worship. When the sewage comes into the plant, it first goes through the screening building, which takes out the floatables and solids. It then goes into the grit building, and using a cyclone effect, we remove all of the dirt and debris from the sewage. That leaves the raw input into the system, then goes into the clarifiers, primary clarifiers, where the sewage is injected with ferric chloride, which is what's called a flocculant. Essentially what it does is it's an aid to settling out any suspended solids in the sewage. The first sample there is a sample of the output from the primary clarifiers, and that is what we have been putting into the bay since the early 1960s. That was the limit of the treatment that was provided. We would take that effluent, we would hit it with chlorine to disinfect it, and then it would be discharged straight into the bay.
This is the final.
The second sample that Madam Chair is holding up is distinctly clearer than the first sample. That is the product of the secondary treatment. So the primary effluent is then sent to the new portion of the plant, where it goes through a biological process to both filter as well as digest the suspended solids that are still in the sewage. The sample that the chair has in her hand is not a completely compliant sample at the present time, because we are still
growing the bugs that are needed to essentially eat the nutrients that are in the primary effluent. But the long and the short of it is the plant is functioning as intended at the present time. We are still waiting for the bugs to grow so that they can digest the ammonia that is present in the sewage. But we are starting to see minute concentrations of some of the byproducts of that process. So that tells us that the growth is occurring, albeit slowly. These bugs are very temperature sensitive. They don't grow very well below about 10 degrees C, and they really need to get up in the 12 to 14, 15 degrees C in order to really take hold and grow in a very rapid way. So that process is going to take a little bit longer, but we are seeing just in what we are achieving thus far, we are meeting secondary treatment quality in all aspects, save and except for ammonia. So that's a very positive indication. As the chair has alluded to, or Mr. Ritchie rather, has alluded to, we are very close to completion. I would say that as we speak, we're probably in the order of 95% complete. I can say, and most of you have seen for yourselves, that the plant on the interior is for the most part complete. There's still wiring and millwork and other odds and sods that have to be completed, but the bulk of the heavy work is now complete, and the majority of the outstanding work is frankly site works, a large portion of which cannot be completed until late May and early June, simply because materials are not available. Case in point, asphalt. The asphalt plants won't be up for another 2 weeks yet, so the contractor cannot move forward with those works until the asphalt becomes available.
Okay, thank you very much. This one here that is primary, you really can't look through it. It looks clear, but you can't see it. This one you can look through. So it is coming. Anyway, just wanted to show you that. Thank you very much, Ken. Under other business, we talked about styrofoam. Styrofoam cannot be recycled, and there's no market for it, so it goes into the garbage. We ask it to be broken up into small pieces so it doesn't take up a lot of your space, and to, if at all possible, buy things that are not packaged in styrofoam. We had a concern concern regarding the discovery of asbestos in City Hall, and I believe that question was answered very well by the chair of that committee. And that is, I move these minutes.
Any questions, discussion? Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. Just on the bus stop at the library and the motion that was defeated, maybe a little further discussion. So that report came from staff from a long-standing problem we've had with that stop there. It was recommended by the Accessibility Committee as well. I guess the issues are that we have people, it's one of our most heavily used stops, being the library and the art gallery right there. We have people crossing the street to catch the bus. There's no natural crosswalk there, I guess you'd say. The bus stop itself is right in front of the 3 Victoria Cross winners plaque in the Cenotaph area. I don't know what you call that area, but so it's been a concern of the Legion for some time, I guess, I don't know, a sort of respectful concern. And then the other side is there's no bus stop at one of our most heavily used places. So I think the accessibility recognized that the report where we said we'd put it closer towards the art gallery and have a actual crosswalk coming across the street was not perfect, but it might be the best of bunch of bad solutions, I guess you'd say. It did remove, I think it was 3 or 4 parking spots, which was obviously is a concern. But I guess the concern is we don't do that. That we're just not going to do anything there, and so our most heavily used stop won't have a bus stop. Well, all the concerns I just went over. So I'm not sure if the concern is 10th Street and we're going to have a lot of changes, perhaps delaying, I guess, is one option, but I'm just not sure. Well, as far as I can tell, and this has been looked at numerous times, there's not a whole lot of other options. So I don't know who I'm throwing that question to, but I know the accessibility was pleased that this was finally going to be addressed. And if we don't do it, people with mobility problems now at one of our most heavily used stops don't have anywhere to go. So anyway, just a general question, I guess.
Councillor Kepke?
On the same topic, the issue is a bus shelter at the bus stop. You kept saying they don't have a bus stop at the bus stop, but you meant a bus shelter, I'm sure. Further down the block, about midway, there's some handicap parking spaces that already have the graded incline onto the sidewalk. I wonder if that's a better spot to put a bus shelter and a cross in the mid-block there. So if they could certainly consider that.
The only issue with that would be they'd need to find 2 more accessible parking spots.
Right at the accessible spots, it's already graded. Why do they have to eliminate a parking space?
The accessible parking spots would need parking spots.
We can just hold on for a second. Maybe I'll get Ken to describe, because you're trying to picture something, I think, that you kind of have to have the visual or the explanation. It's too bad the picture isn't attached.
It's a visual available.
Your Worship, the intent is to place the proposed, or what was proposed to committee was to place a shelter and therefore move the stop to a point approximately across from the entrance to the gallery. The difficulty that we're facing is that the current location, as the councillor has mentioned, is not seen as being ideal given the nature of the surrounding area and the reverence in which it's held by the community. The difficulty, we tried to put it down on 8th Street just in advance of 1st Avenue West. Unfortunately, that is directly over top of the 8th Street siphon. So that poses difficulties from a point of view of our ability to maintain the siphon, as well as there would be problems with potential buildup of sewer gases. So that option was rejected. We have a limit as to how far down the block we can push this, because there is another stop at the intersection of 9th Avenue and 1st Street, or 9th Street and 1st Avenue West. So to push it too much further along really doesn't serve the purpose for which it was intended, which is to serve the library and the gallery, as well as it's forcing people to have to walk much further away from the primary attractions, which are those 2 facilities. The proposal would affect 2 parking stalls, and it's necessary to create an island because of the requirements for a pedestrian crosswalk. Under the Ontario Traffic Manual, all the signage has to be right at the edge of the traveled portion of the roadway. And so having signs back at the curb line is not acceptable and would represent a safety hazard.
that would put the city at some exposure for risk. So this is the compromise that was arrived at, which was to create an island. We, through our consultations with planning, they felt that it was desirable that the shelter be put back behind the sidewalk, to not put it out of sight, but rather to screen it off, so that it didn't interfere with sight lines for the cenotaph, as well as other related issues that would crop up as a result of the Bird State celebrations and so forth. The concerns that were expressed at committee was that, in fact, First Avenue is as one committee member put it, jaywalk central. It's a free fall, and they questioned the usefulness and practicality of creating a crosswalk that, frankly, nobody. The assertion was that few people would actually use, and therefore the benefit achieved would be disproportionate to the cost incurred. In the end, the committee felt that there was ample waiting area inside the foyer of the library, and that given that the current bus stop is quite close to the intersection with 8th Street, any potential patrons would be able to stay in the library foyer until it was time for the bus, and then proceed to the corner where they could then cross the roadway and move over to the bus stop. Therefore, the exposure to the elements would be minimized.
Thank you. Now that we've got the explanation and the visual diagram up there, I'm going to go back to Councillor Kepke, your comments, and then to Councillor McManaman.
Thank you very much. That does help explain things.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McManaman.
Not really too much. I think the discussion that a person with mobility issues can just wait in the library, and when the bus comes, they can run out to the bus. I'll let Councillor Rahman answer that comment, I think. But all I would say is we need to go back to what the original problem is, and the original problem is we have a bus stop in the middle of our cenotaph. That was what the problem is. Second one is a bus shelter, and thank you for correcting me, you're right. A bus shelter for people waiting for that bus. So wherever the stop needs to be, it shouldn't be there. Not exactly there, where it is now in front of the Victoria Cross plaques. So that's the one issue. And if it's not there, then where's it going to be, and then where do the people go? So, I mean, it is a bit complicated, I'll acknowledge that. The only question I have for Mr. Becking is about, so the 10th Street Bridge, is there some discussion that this, or how would this impact, I guess if we had traffic going both directions on here, that would impact it?
At some point during the reconstruction of the 10th Street Bridge, it will be necessary to close 10th Street for a prolonged period of time. That means that we will have to be looking at alternative routes to detour 10th Street traffic around the site. There is a potential for those detours to affect what is the current arrangement on First Avenue West, well, in that whole downtown area. I don't know what the answer is at the present time, or at least we have not received the report from the consultant as to what the recommended solution is at the present time. So I think what's being suggested here is that perhaps making any decision on this matter may be premature until such time as we've got that feedback.
Go to
Quick follow-up, and just remind me the timelines for answers on that 10th Street Bridge?
I'm.
Is that a 2018?
No. We should have preliminary recommendations on that. I'm going to say mid to late summer, Your Worship.
I mean, and so, sorry, I don't know if this is twice I've said this, but I don't have a problem delaying this if it's going, 10th Street Bridge is going to be a pretty big issue. We all get that, and we wouldn't want to build this and then find out in the summer we want to go the other direction or something. And if we're just talking summer of 2017, we could table this discussion till we see what that says. But anyway, that's just my comment. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor O'Leary?
Well, I want to thank you for bringing it up because we had a pretty healthy debate at the committee level. I voted against it, and not because I don't want a shelter there. I voted against it because of this crosswalk that protrudes out into the middle of the street, and it screws up snow removal and everything else. And I don't think people will use it other than the people that get off the bus. But until Councillor Kepke came up with the idea of the one further down, like if we went backwards and took it back towards the river and then ramped down onto the street, I'd be all for that. I just don't understand why we have to protrude right out in the middle of the street with a crosswalk. But having said that, I'm not in favor of delaying it either. Like, I think if we're going to have one, we should make the decision to go ahead.
Councillor Lemon? Thanks.
Well, it's a complete and utter fallacy to say you can stand in the vestibule of the library and catch the bus, because I know I've missed it. So you can't get down the ramp, across the street, because you don't see the bus until it's literally too late. We have a problem here. I very much want to see a bus stop put in, but I have a question. We can't put it right at the bridge. Am I correct in that, Kev?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Where do we access the siphon? Is that under the sidewalk or under the road?
It's directly behind the sidewalk and immediately west of the parapet wall of the bridge.
There's no perfect solution to this. This is the problem. I want, personally, I think there should be I think everybody agrees there should be some kind of a shelter there. The problem is you don't want to block the cenotaph, and I, as a Legion member, fully understand that. And we also don't want to create a block to snow removal, which is enough of a problem in the city as it is, and we don't need that. And I just, at this point, I don't like that solution because of what it does to traffic. I would agree this is jaywalking central, but so are most homes on the streets, including 10th Street. However, one thing that would make transit better in that area is at the 9th Street and First Avenue West. There is a stop there which is totally loused up because we have a guardrail right on the street and then we have a guardrail behind that. As a result, the transit bus cannot lower its ramp without the front end of the bus being out into the intersection. And I think that problem needs to be addressed while we're contemplating what to do with this. I wish there was another compromise, because neither one of these work.
I'm going to go to Deputy Mayor Wright next.
Thank you. I'm going to suggest that this go back to committee. I think that it looks to me like the most important thing is that we move the bus stop away from the cenotaph where it is now and put a crosswalk in for safety. And then let's think about the bus shelter later on. We don't really need the bus shelter as much as we need to move the bus stop and get a crosswalk in there for safety. So if we could take this back to committee, and then the committee can take another look at it and come back with another report. That's what I'm going to recommend.
Okay, so Madam Clerk, what's the procedure here? We're approving minutes with.
If we could have a motion, save and accept item E. E2. If that could be the first motion, and then we deal with it separately.
Deputy Mayor Wright, you want to make that motion?
I will make that motion. I moved the minutes, but I will move the minutes, save and accept. And I pulled up the last report that we had to take a look at it, and so I have to go back to my other minutes. So do you have the number, Andy?
With the part that save and accept.
Yep, save and accept part. I can maybe find it. Okay, yeah, so before save and accept 11B4. And that 11B4 go back to committee for further for a
Discussion.
report.
Councillor Kepke?
My comment is still on the bus motion, if that's one we're on, or are we not on it yet? The motion of the bus shelter, going back to committee. Okay.
We're not on that yet. The motion
right.
is to pass the minutes, approve the minutes, save and accept that section that the clerks have written down accurately. All in favor? And that's carried. Now the next motion. Go ahead.
The next motion is that we send that report number. What is it? Okay. C2.
8E.
Back to committee.
Okay, so on that motion, hold on, Councillor, not Councillor, you've been demoted. Mr. Beckett.
Your Worship, the item was 8G as in George.
8G.
8G in the committee minutes, or the committee agenda, it was item 8G.
Okay, as long as we're on the same page and the clerks know how to put bubble gum on it and stick it back together. Okay, Councillor Kepke.
Comment is, Councillor Lemon said there's no perfect solution. Well, in my mind, the perfect solution is to turn the traffic the other way so that it's right in front of the library and they're not crossing the street. It's an expensive move, but I would at least ask that they certainly consider that in their report when they come back to us.
The only point is that there's been lots of traffic studies done on that, looking at all the other fallout because of that, all the way around the block and the next block and the next block. So there's different consequences, and everyone at that end of the table is biting their fingernails.
But this council doesn't know all those consequences, so maybe they should hear that in the report.
Go ahead.
If I could, Your Worship, and having attended the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting when this came forward, there were concerns legitimately there. I would suggest that perhaps the follow-up report to Operations Committee, we will involve all of staff to put forward a report with, and this may be a while, all of the options that we can think of, all of the consequences, so that at least the decision, difficult as it may be, will be in light of all of those. And certainly as whatever that decision be, we go forward to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, they will understand why we've arrived at that decision and for how long. So it will be full input, and I would be prepared to come and perhaps have quite a thorough discussion at that meeting.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, Councillor Gregg.
I would just mention that we were aware of the traffic flow patterns. We endorsed the traffic study as part of the River Precinct in our first year of council. So those recommendations came before council. We looked at them. We endorsed the findings at that time, and it was in the River Precinct plan. So I just wanted to point that out. We've seen it. We're quite aware of it.
We can have it reviewed. That's good. Councillor Lemon, I'm just going to call the question. We don't need to. Yeah. Yeah, we'll look at it. All in favor? That is carried. Thanks. We're down to minutes of closed meetings for approval.
Thank you, Worship. I'll move, and I suppose you want them separate? No? Okay, minutes of the where are we? Minutes of the closed session meeting of council on April 24th, which is 11D1, and minutes of the closed session of the Canada 150 Owen Sound 160 celebration ad hoc committee meeting on May 2nd, 2017 as amended, which is 11D2.
Thank you. All in favor? That is carried. So other business, Councilor Larry, I think you had one?
I do. I wanted to send out, just for the Walk for Water, I wanted to send out a big thank you to Jeff Robbins of the Beta Main Street Hair Salon for the big success of this year's Walk for Water. $20,000 will go to Madagascar to help the people there have clean potable water. This year there was a total of $50,000 raised. Barry Crystal raising the most pledges, and $30,000 of that money will stay right here in Owen Sound, going to OSHARE, who are feeding about 120 people a day. Also want to thank John Tamming, who paid $500 for an attack jersey that was auctioned off. And on a personal note, I want to thank Director of Community Services, Pam Coulter, and Councillor Thomas, and Councillor Kepke, Councillor Dodd, Councillor McManaman, Deputy Mayor Wright, and Mayor Boddy for sponsoring me. And I think that was a pretty good event. It was nice to be involved in getting $30,000 to OSHARE, and had a little bit of fun doing it too. Thanks.
Thank you. Deputy
Nice
Mayor Wright.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all of the volunteers and the Order of Good Cheer people who worked. It was a lot of work on the cruise night, the dinner cruise that they had a week ago. They served over 400 people dinner in 2 sittings, and it was a sellout, and it was a lovely trip. And the money that they raised that night goes to the washrooms and change rooms at Kelso Park. So this is a group that has worked really hard for this community and have done a lot of good in the community. And there were a lot of people volunteered their services, and they did work hard. So I just think they deserve a big thank you from us. The second thing I want to report on is the OSIM conference that Mayor Boddy and I attended over in the town of Blue Mountains. Now, I don't know whether it was because it was close here and we didn't have to spend the night away because we could drive back and forth for the 2 days. That's one of the best conferences I've ever attended. And it was Rural Meets Urban Conference, and everything in that conference was relative to what we are doing in this community. It was excellent. And it was jam-packed for a full day and a half. We started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and both the mayor and I were there at 8 o'clock in the morning. And we started out with healthcare in rural Ontario, talked very topical when you talk about the need for nursing homes and hospital care and all of the things that the LHINs are doing, and it was very, very appropriate. Bill Monroe, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, was there to bring us up to date on some of the things that this government is looking at with respect to our municipal councils. We had a session next on the asset management plan, financial structure for infrastructure. Very interesting, because as it is now, we were asked how many people put in applications for infrastructure money, and nearly every hand in the room went up. I think there were about 160 delegates there. And how many got money? Very few received money. So that whole program is going to take a shift so that we do not have to have shovel-ready projects in order to apply for infrastructure money, but we'll be able to apply for infrastructure money and bank it in reserves until such time as we have a project ready to use it. So, which makes a heck of a lot more sense. Mike Harcourt, the former Premier of British Columbia, was a keynote speaker. He wasn't as fiery as I've heard him speak, but he was okay. And one of the things I picked out was his land bank. He talked about how Vancouver had a land bank, as they sold off, half the money they put into operations and the other half they put into reserves. The next one was hydro. We had a huge talk on rural hydro, the costs of rural hydro, what's happening in hydro today, how the use of hydro has gone down 6%, and of course, why has that happened? What I found so interesting is one of the speakers had been on the Energy Board for 7 years, and I couldn't figure out how he could be talking to us about lowering rates when he was the one that was partially responsible for setting rates in the first place. So, but anyway, that was quite a report. The president of AMO was there, a very well-spoken woman that the mayor suggested we invite her to come and talk to us about AMO at some point. She's close to here. Also, we had the labor relations, and that's I can't report on that here, but I will fill you in on that at some point. We had the ombudsman there, and they talked about council integrity, and we're certainly up on the game. We have a policy that we follow, and for councillors, and for an integrity policy, and land use and planning was also. That was packed into one full day. We didn't finish till almost 5 o'clock, and the next morning we were right back again, and a very interesting topic on changing rural landscape. 3 local women were on that. One of them was Cheryl Brine, who is over at the office on 8th Street. And they talked about revitalizing a downtown area, talked about the economic development in the town of Minto, and all of the work that they have done to preserve buildings, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of that stuff we're doing with the use of ARPA grants and things like that. Very topical. We ended up with the shared economy in small town Ontario. Very interesting with Andrew Siegwert, who is the president of the Blue Mountain Village Association and has done a lot of work over there in economic development planning and growth industries. We had the usual leader of the opposition parties, and then we had the parliamentary assistant to the premier speak to us too. It was finished over about 12:30 or 1 o'clock on Friday, but I tell you, it was one of the best conferences. More information packed into a day and a half than I've ever received at an AMO conference. So my advice is, folks, next year, Peter, you usually go to these things too, but I didn't see you there this year. That's, I'm sure there was, but next year this is small rural Ontario, which fits us perfectly, and there's people there from small rural Ontario that we can converse to. Anyway, you'll get information on next year's as it comes out. It'll be held in Niagara Falls.
Good, thank you. Got a number of things coming and past that I want to report on. The first one, I'm partly as a lawyer and like everyone that lives in Owen Sound, a historian in some way. As part of our Betwixt and Between program, the Untold Tom Thompson story over at the Art Gallery, treaties 72 and 82 are being borrowed from the National Archives and will be installed at the Tom until September 10th when the exhibit closes. So these are the 2 treaties that cover this region with the Chippewas of Saugeen, Chippewas of Nawash. The exhibitions deal with the untold histories of our country and challenges the traditional narratives. Sorry, it's a editing mistake. That we've been presented by schools, governments, and museums. I guess that was right. The information about the treaties has been written by Trish Meekins Nadjuan and will be available in 3 languages, Anishinaabe, English, and French. Tomorrow there will be a special pipe ceremony at 1 p.m. at the Tom in honor of the treaties being returned to the traditional territories of the Saugeen First Nation and Chippewas of Nawash. Ceremony will be conducted by Dave Root. All are welcome to attend. However, given the sacred nature of the ceremony, request that no phones be taken in during the ceremony, so we don't want flashes or alarms going off. So Treaty 72 is surrender of the Saugeen or the Bruce Peninsula. It was one of the largest surrenders of land for the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, though not the largest. Treaty 82 is surrender of Nawash, 1857. So as we celebrate Owen Sound as a community of 160 years and our country as 150, we overlook the fact that there was a community here for many years before that should be part of the celebration, and it really is 1857 wasn't really such a good year for the Nawash, which was when they surrendered their land in Brook, Kelso Beach, that whole area that we've been talking about where the new garden is going to be. And all through that area, I think most people know that is it Mary Miller Park that's at the end is a burial ground, and then further up onto 5th Avenue, 6th Avenue, just a couple of blocks up from there is another burial ground, and there's going to be a walking trail or plan to go through that area to go and see it. So it's pretty amazing for our history to have these two treaties returned, because the art gallery is I guess an A designation, or the highest designation as a gallery. They were able to get these, and otherwise they wouldn't be able to come. So it's a great opportunity for us to review some of the history that we don't talk about necessarily in schools and don't learn enough about. And it is part of our area and part of our history of our region that we all should know better and get to know better, and I think we will. I note senior lacrosse team, the North Stars, have their home opener this Saturday. This is their start of their 50th season, and they think they put together a team to win the President's Cup. There's kids coming home and kids coming in from other areas that want to play for this team. They had a pretty good success in their first game the other night, and some kid, I forget his name, that got the first star. I think it was Coulter or something. So Pam's son had a great game. I attended the Georgian Riding Association for Challenged Equestrians. They had a fundraiser event at Cobble Beach to support that program, which is great. So they provide therapeutic riding. Grays may be challenged for behavioral disorders, mental health issues, motor functional cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, Down syndrome, autism, a whole list of things. So it's a really good program that the McLeese family has been involved with. Previous Mayor Ruth Lovell, this is one of her causes that she has been very supportive of for years, and it was a nice event to be able to attend. Last week, unveiling of the art installation up at Heritage Place Mall by my friend Ann Keeling. Go and see it. It's amazing. It's look especially on the back. There was some kind of a registry of all the people that owned houses in Owen Sound, all the people that worked in different trades from 1857. So all of those names are on the back, either as a residence or as a resident and a trade. So that the history is all there on the back. The place to sit in the front. You can do a selfie, get a picture taken, and tweet it out. National Day of Mourning was last Friday. That is the only thing in our agenda that the City of Owen Sound does a what's the word I'm looking for? Proclamation. Thank you. As we've quit doing others, we continue to do that. It recognizes men and women who have been injured, killed, or made ill in the workplace each year, and it's phenomenal numbers still in this modern age that the injuries across Canada and the deaths is surprising when you hear the statistics. I was also able to attend Legion, Canadian Legion Branch 6, Ladies Auxiliary 90th anniversary, which is pretty impressive. The Legion was started approximately 1 year before, and there's a little bit of confusion, or they don't have the date registered right, but it's really a year older. even though the Legion itself will celebrate its 90th anniversary. The ladies' auxiliary started really quickly after that. It's kind of neat. Attended with Peter Reeser from the Chamber of Commerce to welcome the captain of the first ship that came into the harbor. There is a top hat that's given out each year. It's the same one, but to the captain. It was wonderful to be able to go up onto the bridge of a ship that is 740 feet long and 75 feet wide. Beautiful views from up there, and the captain is really a neat guy. I'd done a lot of sailing out of Turkey on international waters, and has only been in the Great Lakes for a couple of years. He was telling us the difference, but it was that's always something fun to do every year. And attended the CMHC Kids Help phone walk on Sunday morning at Harrison Park. And again, there is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline for children that are suffering. They don't know why they feel the way they do. They can phone, they can get help. There's always somebody there to answer the telephone. They don't get an answering machine. So it's pretty important to raise funds for that and to recognize that. So there's probably, I'm going to say 200 people that were out bringing awareness to it and raising funds for that. So those are the things that I've done in the past couple of weeks, or will be doing tomorrow and the next couple of days. So that's my list. I think that completes other business, and now it's just number 13, motion to rise.
Moved by myself that the committee rise and report.
All in favor? That is carried. Back into formal session, resolution.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Gregg, that the action taken in committee of the whole in considering public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business be confirmed by this council.
All in favor? That is carried. Notices of motion. Seeing none. New business by resolution. There is none. Bylaws.
Moved by myself, seconded.
Hold on just a second.
Sorry.
We'll get them read first. Sorry.
Good idea.
Through your worship, bylaws listed for approval on tonight's agenda include the confirmatory bylaw, a bylaw to execute a lease agreement with Mudtown Station Incorporated respecting the CP Rail Station lands, a bylaw to execute a license agreement with the Canadian Mental Health Association respecting a northward expansion of the St. George's Park Community Garden, a bylaw to execute a lease agreement with Doris Waite respecting a sidewalk patio at 1023 2nd Ave East, a bylaw to execute a municipal funding agreement with Water's Edge Festivals and Events for hosting the Ontario 150 Tour, a bylaw to execute a facility use agreement with Sarasota Producing Company or Circus, a bylaw to execute a site plan agreement with 2557467 Ontario Inc. respecting property at 720 2nd Ave East, a bylaw to execute an easement agreement with the County of Grey for municipal services, and lastly, a bylaw to adopt a policy respecting taxes for the city of Owen Sound.
Thank you.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Gregg, that bylaw numbers 2017 065, 066, 067, 068, 069, 070, 071, 072, and 073 be passed and enacted.
And all in favor? That is carried. Great, thank you everyone. That completes our business for the night, so we can adjourn, and by my watch it is 9:25. Thanks everyone.